Hello, puppets. Here I am today with my Grimm's fairy tales. I'm back. You can hear that I'm not nearly as stuffy, and being able to breathe is very encouraging for when it comes to reading. And today I'm skipping ahead to read the Bremen Town Musicians because I have a good friend who has requested this story, and there's no harm in jumping about in such a large book. I don't see why not. It seems like a great plan. And as I've been away a bit, I wanted to do something special. So, the Bremen Town Musicians. There was once an ass whose master had made him carry sacks to the mill for many a long year, but whose strength had began at last to fail, so that each day as it came found him less and less capable of work. Then his master began to think of turning him out, but as the ass was guessing that something was in the wind that boded him no good, he ran away, taking the road to Bremen, for there he thought he might have an engagement as a town musician. When he had gone a little way, he found a hound lying on the side of the road panting, as if he had run a long way. "Now hold fast. What are you doing here so out of breath?" asked the ass. "Oh dear," said the dog, "I'm now old and I get weaker every day and I can do no good in the hunt, so my master was going to have me killed. And I have made my escape, but now how am I going to gain a living?" "Well, I'll tell you what," said the ass, "I'm going to Bremen to become a town musician. You may go as well with me there and take up music too. I can play the lute and you can beat a drum." And the dog consented and they walked on together. It was not long before they came at last to a cat sitting in the road, looking dismal as 3 wet days. "Now then, what is the matter with you, old shaver?" asked the ass. "I should like to know who would be cheerful when their neck is on the line," asked the cat, "and now I am old and my teeth are getting blunt, and I would rather sit by the oven and purr, but rather than to run after mice. And my mistress, she wanted to drown me, so I took off myself, but good advice is scarce, and I do not know what is to become of me." "Go with us to Bremen," said the ass. "Become a town musician. You know serenading." And the cat thought well of the idea and went on with them accordingly. After 3 travelers passed by a yard, there was a cock perched on the gate, crowing with all of his might. "Your cries are enough to pierce marrow and bone," said the ass. "What is the matter?" "I have foretold good weather for Lady Day, all that the shirts may be washed and dried. But now on Sunday morning company is coming, and the mistress has told the cook that I must be made into a soup. And this evening my neck is to be wrung, so I am crowing with it now with all my might while I still can." "Well, you had better go with us then, Chanticleer." That's a great word. "You had better go with us, Chanticleer," said the ass. "We are going to Bremen, and at any rate that will be better than you dying. You have a powerful voice, and when we are all performing it together, should have a very good effect." So the cock consented, and they went on all 4 together. But Bremen was so far off to be reached it could not be found in just one day. And towards the evening they came to a wood, where it was determined to pass upon the night. The ass and the dog lay under the tree, and the cat up among the branches. The cock flew to the very top, as it was the safest place for him. Before he went to sleep, he looked around him at all the 4 points of the compass, and perceived a little distance in the shining there was a light. And he called out to his companions that there must be a house not far off, as he could see the light. And so said the ass, "We had better get up there, for these are uncomfortable quarters." And the dog began to fancy new bones, if not quite bare, would do him some good. And they all set off in the direction of the light, and it grew larger and brighter until at last it led them to a robber's house, all lit up. The ass, being the biggest, went to the window and looked in. "Well, what do you see?" asked the dog. "What do I see?" answered the ass. "Here's a table set out with splendid eatables and drinkables, and robbers sitting in and making themselves very comfortable." "Well, that would suit us," said the cock. "Yes, indeed, I wish we were there," said the ass. They consulted together as how they might manage to get the robbers out of the house, and at last they lay upon a plan. The ass went to his place on his 4 feet on the window-sill, and the dog on the ass's back, and the cat on top of the dog, and lastly the cock was to fly up and perch on the cat's head. And when that was done, given a signal, they all began to perform their music. The ass brayed, and the dog barked, the cat mewed, and the cock crowed, and they burst through the room, breaking all the panes of glass. And the robbers fled at the dreadful sound, and thought it was some goblin, and fled into the wood in uttermost terror. The 4 companions sat down at the table, and made free with the remains of the meal, and feasted as if they had been hungry for a month. And when they had finished, they put out the lights, and each sought out a sleeping place to suit his nature and habits. The ass had laid himself outside on the dunghill, the dog behind the door, the cat on the hearth by the warm ashes, and the cock settled himself in the cock loft. And as they were all tired from their long journey, they soon fell asleep. When midnight drew near, and the robbers from afar saw that no light was burning and that everything appeared to be quiet, their captain said to them that they thought they had run away without any reason, telling them to go and reconnoiter. Little retcon robbers, I like that. But reconnoiter, so one of them went and found that everything was quiet. He went into the kitchen to strike a light. Taking the glowing fiery eyes of the cat for burning coals, he held a match to them in order to kindle it. But the cat, not seeing the joke, flew into his face, spitting and scratching. And then he cried out in terror and ran out the back door, but the dog who was laying there ran at him and bit his leg. And as he was rushing through the yard by the dunghill, the ass struck out and gave him a great kick with his hind hoof. And the cock, who had been awakened by the noise, fell to brisk, cried out a cock-a-doodle-doo with a I've never been able to make the cock-a-doodle-doo noise. Of all the sounds that I've been able to create, and having practiced with my mum as a little kiddo, I could never get a rooster crow. It just didn't work for me. But anyhow, then the robber got back as well as he could to his captain and said, "Oh dear, that house! There is such a gruesome witch, and I felt her breath and long nails against my face. And by the door there stands a man who stabbed me in the leg with a knife. And in the yard there's a black spectre who beat me with his wooden club. And above the roof there sits the justice who cries, 'Bring me that rogue right here!' And so I ran from that place as fast as I could." From that time forward, the robbers never ventured to the house, and the 4 Bremen Town Musicians found themselves well off where they were, so they stayed. And the last person who has related the tale is still living, as you can see. But that there is the fun. I love how charming it is, and how just there are stories that I haven't gotten to tell you all, and I'll have to put a little forewarning because they can be abrasive. But the Bremen musicians are the best. They're sweet and frightened off all of the rogues. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.